the way?
Yes, I'll fire questions at you, Holly.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, so to kick off, I just want to acknowledge that it's NAIDOC week. Got beautiful mob in the room, and I'm here on Gadigal land in so-called Sydney. I've been living and working on Gadigal land for 8.5 years now. I feel really privileged to be in this space, being a Warlpiri woman from Northern Territory, Ladramanu. I'm a long way from home. So I spent my NAIDOC morning on Monday going off to the city and got smoked properly, got welcomed by Aunty Rhonda Dixon Grosvenor, which is their protocol here. A little bit different to us back home. So it's always good to share yarns about how we welcome each other on our own countries, and to make sure that when we're visitors that we respect the lands that we're visiting on. So if you just want to pop in the chat just while we're having this yarn, feel free to write where you're all zooming in from.
While people are commenting, I'll say that I'm here on beautiful Darawal country down in Wollongong, which is where I live and work mostly. I work remotely a lot of the week and head up to Sydney regularly, once or twice a week. And yeah, I've learned a lot from the connections down here with the Wadi Wadi people, and my own family has some connections to the Wiradjuri nation. So I'm still learning a lot about culture and embracing it, and really privileged to be hopefully helping you guys on your journey as you learn about my industry and I learn about our shared culture a bit more. So thanks for the opportunity to be here and to talk to you all today. I'm really grateful for that.
Thanks, Holly. That's really lovely. Look, I could do intros for everyone, but we don't have everyone in the group, so I might just go around and you can all just say your name if you like, and who your mob is. And I won't get used to say too much else. So if everyone wants to go around, I might start with you, Blair. Just say your name, your mob.
Hey, Holly, how are you?
Hi, good.
My name's Blair. I'm a Dunghutti boy from Kempsey, and I'm currently living in Newcastle, Wabakal country, while I study at uni.
Awesome.
Beautiful. And Tamika?
Hey, Holly. I'm Tamika. I'm a proud Aboriginal, Torres Strait and South Sea Islander woman. And yeah, I am a campaigner with GetUp. But yeah, really keen to learn and deep dive into this a little bit more. So yeah.
And where are you, Tamika? Where are you today?
Gubbi Gubbi country on the Sunshine Coast.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Beautiful, sunny. And Malika?
Hi, Holly. Sorry, I have a sore voice. I'm just coming back from being sick. But my name is Malaika. I am a Torres Strait Islander, Pacifica woman. I'm from the village of Waihefa in Tonga, and I have bloodlines to Samoa, Fiji, and other islands in the Pacific. I also have bloodlines to West Asia, which is why me and Tallulah really get along. She thinks we're cousins. But yeah, I am zooming in from Yagara country, but usually I'm working on Yagara and Turrbal country near the river. But yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us, Malika, even though you're a bit crook still. Good on you.
No, thanks everybody. It's lovely. And Holly, I said that for this yarn, I'll just be asking questions, and the mob might have questions, but they also might not. So we'll just yarn for as long as we need to, and we'll share with everybody after. And yeah, any questions that come up after, I'm sure we can email them to you as well.
And I'll just mention, maybe my colleague Rudy Maxwell will join us. I'm not sure of how she's faring today, but she's our Indigenous Affairs reporter and has heaps of experience in reporting both at AAP and at her previous employer at the Koori Times. So maybe she'll pop in, but even if she doesn't, if there's questions that you have for her, fire them at me. And if I don't know the answers, I can chase them up for you.
Yeah, deadly. Rudy was my editor when I started working for the Koori Mail back in the day, and amazing, got a wealth of knowledge. So
that's true.
Yeah, it'd be awesome if she can join. So I'll just get you to start, Holly. Just talk a bit about AAP, because not everyone's familiar with what AAP does. Talk a bit about the platform, what you publish, and what your role is there.
Okay, so my title is Director of Editorial Partnerships, which could mean anything, I suppose. But in this context, I think the most relevant stuff to mention is that I look after our training and development program for staff. And that means that I work very closely with cadets and interns, and I identify the support that's required from our reporting crew, and I bring in external trainers and work with internal trainers and do a lot of work in that space, and then think about, you know, are we giving people everything we need? How do we get that, and schedule it all out? So that's one small element. Another bigger part of my job is around fact checking. In 2019, I set up our AAP fact check unit and was very involved in the editorial operation of that initially, but now am overseeing the business side of that. So all of our partnerships with TikTok and Meta and Google and others that we work with occasionally, how we're going to expand and grow, how can we make our work more impactful? All of those things are my day-to-day concern, and that involves lots of conversations with lots of, you know, people who are in media-facing roles at those platforms, plus conversations with government, conversations with, you know, occasionally other media. We deliver training to creators on those platforms as well. So there's a lot of different elements of that. And separately, well, not separately, it's all tied up together, but there is a fact check editor whose day-to-day role is the editorial output of the fact check unit. But I am, you know, the buck stops with me on that. So I'm keeping like an eye on how things are tracking, our quality control, our balance, whether we're really living up to the standards we set for ourselves. I do a lot of that type of stuff, keeping a close eye on things. What else is relevant to this conversation? I think it's probably worth saying that I've been a journalist for a really long time now. I'm getting to the point where I kind of shudder to say how long, but let's just say it's more than 25 years. And so I've worked in hard news, which is primarily what AAP is concerned with. I've been at AAP for quite a long time too. So AAP is, for those who might be hearing this kind of fresh without much context, it's Australian Associated Press. We're a news wholesaler. We're called a newswire, but we're a news wholesaler. So pretty much every major media outlet in Australia and some in other locations, like we've got lots of clients in New Zealand and some overseas, they subscribe to AAP, and we provide a continuous 24/7 feed of all kinds of different news content, whether it's politics or a court case in South Australia, or a crime related story out of Darwin, or a footy match in Townsville. Like, there's all, like, you think of it and we are probably covering it if it's of national interest. So we cover all of that all the time with photos and text, and we provide this constant feed, and our subscribers can then select what they want for their own publications. So we write it once and it gets used many times. And the rationale behind that is, you know, our service is like a multi-million-dollar cost base. So it's very expensive to cover all of Australia. And if you're, you know, the Cairns Bulletin or whatever, if you're running one small title, you can't possibly afford to cover all of the territory that we can cover for you for a fraction of the price, because we share that price amongst many clients. So that's kind of the model, the Newswire model. And AAP is a bit unique because we are a not-for-profit. So whatever we earn in the course of our business, we invest it back into journalism and objective, fact-based journalism at that. So that's kind of our unique value proposition, if you like. That's what sets us apart. There's only two Newswires. One of them's owned by News Corp and services mostly internal clients, but we've been around for nearly 90 years, serving all of Australian media without any agenda or campaign-based reporting. We just cover the facts. We cover it very straight and in an objective fashion. And here's Rudy. Hi, Rudy. How are you?
Hey, Holly. I'm good.
Yeah.
All motivated by listening to Linda Burney. So. Oh,
no, I think you can be excused for that. I was just setting the scene, really. So giving a bit of an outline of who I am and a rundown on what AAP is and does. But happy to take any questions if there's anything that you're still wondering about in relation to that, or move on, whatever you like.
Yeah, beautiful. Any questions at this point from anybody? No.
I did a great job explaining it.
You definitely did. Look, I'll have some follow-ups in a sec, but might be good to get Rudy to introduce yourself now. Nice to see you, Rudy.
G'day, Rach. How you going?
Yeah, good. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, everybody. Yep, my name's Rudy Maxwell, and I'm an Indigenous Affairs reporter with AAP. And yeah,
Talk
for a little bit of background.
talk about your history, what you've been doing.
Yeah, so I've been working as an Indigenous Affairs reporter for a bit over 10 years now. Previously, I was at the Koori Mail as the editor for about 9 years, and before that as a journo. And previous to that, I've kind of moved around a bit in local community news, and then I was a sports reporter starting out my career.
Beautiful. So talk about your role specifically with AAP and what the team looks like. Is it Elamani that you work with?
It is Elamani, yeah. So the team is just me and Elamani, but other people across the organisation will do stories that fall into our round. So, for instance, our Western Australia reporter yesterday did a story about Indigenous rangers and a cane toad program to protect freshwater crocodiles. So, yeah, it's just Elamani and me, and it's a relatively new specific desk, and a relatively new role. We've both been there since late February, early March. And Marnie is a final year uni student. And so we work as a good partnership because she's young and has great ideas. And it's, I think, working really quite well at the moment, I hope.
Yeah, beautiful. I was going to ask if you could give an idea in terms of stories that AAP publish, but also specifically with your team, Rudy, what makes a good yarn for your team at AAP, and what are the sorts of yarns you just won't publish?
Yeah. So for me, and I am kind of in this position where I'm often pitching yarns to my editor, who's our deputy editor, and we will have a conversation. The ones that I think work well are the ones that either are new and fresh, or that visit a more established issue in a fresh way. So I come up with story ideas in a lot of different ways, as does everybody. Some is press releases, some is from people just contacting me, and some are from stories I will know that are bubbling away and that I'll put a bit of work into every now and then. So it's probably easier to explain that by example. And recent ones are more useful, probably. So, for instance, today, the reason I was late was because I was watching Linda Burney's speech to the press club, and having already got a copy of her speech from her comms manager, her communications manager, I was able to do a story about that beforehand. But Bernie went off script. So then I'm able to do another story about that. And then when we've finished up here, I'll probably do another story building on the reaction to that, because bless her, she called Peter Dutton a bully boy, and that will make for a good story. Because, you know, and that's one of the things, the ways that it works too, is you can be as prepared as you want to be, but then if something happens, you've got to be ready to react quickly. So that is one way that things happens. Another way is, say, for instance, Marnie reached out to some, when she's been starting out, she's been sending out emails to a range of different organisations, including universities, health places, all sorts of different things. And she got a good one up yesterday, which was about some university researchers using Indigenous languages to name previously unclassified sand dragons from South Australia. So,
that's awesome. Yeah. Nice one. And so the stories you're talking about at the moment, they're very fast turnaround, hey?
They are, that is true. But I will often have, so for instance, I'm also working on a yarn about an old program that was developed under the Abbott government that I bet, Rach, you've done a heap of reporting on too, the remote school attendance strategy. Yes. Yeah, that was the Abbott government's kind of mantra where they were going, we've got to get kids to schools, get adults in jobs. It was, and so now 10 years down the track, there's been some analysis of this program that has shown that because it was a top-down program and not developed in partnership with community, that it actually has had some quite harmful effects. So that is an example of a story that I've been following for a long time, and I know that's bubbling around in the background. But then what that means is when there's new research, there's something to move on that really that adds to a broader picture.
Yeah, I want to, if you can talk a bit more about that, because I think it's really good to have, to be able to bring historical yarns to the present with relevant context today. But it doesn't always have to be from like current research, right? Anniversaries are a good one.
For sure, absolutely. Anniversaries are a good one. Or if you've just got an idea in your head about something that you think is missing from that story, then that can be a good angle as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, great. I guess it might be useful then for the mob in this group to talk a bit about the sort of stories they might be able to pitch, knowing that it's not going to be a super fast turnaround with this program. We're giving them, a good couple of weeks, couple of months to work on stories. So what are some examples of evergreen, timeless content that AAP goes back to? And it might even be talking about some of that historical stuff.
Yeah, and so I'll give an example. So before I actually was working full-time for AAP, I did a bit of freelance, and that involved this pitching sort of process with our editor, Andy. So one of the ones that I worked on that was timeless was I'd got a pitch from I live in northern New South Wales, so from a local Bundjalung artist, Kylie Caldwell, because she had been in a 2-year partnership with a fashion label, a Byron Bay-based fashion label called Spell. And so she'd done these beautiful, her designs had been put onto textiles, and they'd done this beautiful fashion range. Now, there's a lot happening in that space at the moment. There's a lot of Indigenous fashion designers, but also Indigenous artists working with companies. So I was able to also talk to the women from Barbara Women's Centre, who were at that time in India, also doing some textile-based artworks. So there's an example of a story that I was able to bring a couple of different arms into. And one of the reasons that it was also successful was because textiles and art lend themselves to a visual component. And that is something to keep in your mind too when you're thinking about what to pitch. The main thing I would say though, pitch something that you are interested in. The best stories come if you care about what you're writing about. It comes across, even in your pitch right from the start, if you don't have an interest in it. So my advice to anybody who's not quite sure is have a look around, do heaps of reading, and Rach knows I say that to everybody all the time. Read as much as you can from a whole range of different sources, track your own reaction to it, and try and work out why you find it interesting, why it makes you angry, why you think it's funny, why it makes you desperately sad, and then think about what you might find, an interesting angle in a topic would be my advice, I reckon.
Yeah, that's great.
I might jump in and add a few things, and really that's super advice, and you're always going to be able to write more authentically if you've got, a genuine interest in something. We don't always have the luxury of having a huge amount of interest in everything we write about, but if you've got that opportunity, then you should definitely try and take advantage of it. But I'll just add a couple of little parameters around that just particularly for publication at AAP. So we don't publish any first person opinion type stuff. So it would need to be very rigorous, properly researched journalism with talent that is beyond your family circle, for example. Like, we try to keep objectivity present and front and center in everything that we do. And if it looks like you're doing a piece, no matter how legitimate and well-reasoned it might be, but if you're quoting your aunt or your mother or someone like that, it can actually undermine what you're trying to achieve with that piece. So we're looking for the best authoritative sources that you can bring into a piece of content, and an objective distance from that authoritative source, if that's achievable. And a complete avoidance of opinion. We just don't publish it. It's not our thing, and we leave that to the mastheads to do their own opinion, because then they can cater for the audience they know that they are serving, whereas we're serving everybody. So that's why we play it so straight. We're always looking to serve the broadest possible layer. And if you know that your audience is retirees on the far south coast or some other demographic, then you can speak directly to them with your opinion pieces, but we can't do that. The other thing I just wanted to mention is that while we do have a range of different types of content, we don't have super long word lengths on our stories. So an article that you write for AAP is not going to be 10,000 words long. Like, you should be thinking, if it's a feature, then you'd be pitching in, I think, around the 1,000-word mark. And I don't know, Rudy, if you've got any advance on that, but typically our stories are nowhere near that long. So a feature for us, a comfortable zone for us would be about 1,000 words, give or take. So that's something for you to consider if you're going to pitch a piece to.
Can I just add something in on that? One of the writing if you are going to pitch a feature piece of that length, one of the things that the editors have asked us to do is to include 3 discrete voices.
Yeah, I was going to come to that as well.
Sorry.
Exactly. No, perfect. You're underlining my process here, but you would also need to have that range of people. So you would have they have to be authoritative sources, but it's not enough to just have one. And if you're putting forward one side of an argument, then it's really important for our objectivity that we seek the balancing argument, or we at least give time and energy to trying to give space for that argument to appear in the story to some extent as well. So there are a couple of key principles for AAP, all rooted in our huge commitment to being fact-based and objective. So I think that if you're considering your passions and doing as Rudy has encouraged you in the framework of this idea of, the word count and the type of sources you're using and the number of sources you're using, then you'll be really close to having the magic formula for finding something that works for AAP.
So what does a good pitch look like for AAP?
Well,
I'll throw it to you because you've had direct experience. I was just going to say, it's not a huge part of our workflow at AAP. We do have regular contributors and regular freelancers, and we do bring in copy from outside sources, as you've heard Rudy say, but it's more typical for us to use our staff. So there's not a real tried and tested pathway or a well-worn pathway to pitching and a really set, established way to do it right or to do it wrong. But I'm going to let Rudy talk to you about what her approach, because that has been really successful and has, led to bigger and better things. I hope I can say that, Rudy. I hope that's
absolutely. No, for sure.
Yeah. So I'll let her talk to you about how she did it.
Yeah. So one of the things to think about when you're tailoring a pitch to anybody is who that person is, right? Now, editors and deputy editors and section editors in whatever space you're doing to are super busy people. So you want to have it really together, they need to be able to quickly get an idea of what you're talking about. So dot points work really well. Solving problems like having an idea for a visual component is super important, because these days, and you know, I've been a print journalist almost all my career, and I would love to think that people just read words, but they don't. They like pretty pictures or, you know, compelling images. So I would make it brief. Make sure you don't spell anything incorrectly, because what you also have to remember is that editors and sub-editors are editors and sub-editors. So if they see you get something wrong or misspell something in your approach, you're probably not even going to hear back from them, or if you do, it probably won't be positive, would be my suggestion. So brevity, get to the point really quickly, a couple of dot points, and be ready to go if they say yes is the other thing. So I would say do your research and be super prepared, which I would say to almost any situation. But yeah, so be ready to go. You're better to have done more research than to go in underprepared.
And I don't want it to sound intimidating either, especially in the context of this program. We really want you to succeed, and we would love to, you know, guide you and support you on that pitch, but give you a crack at making a good, strong pitch right off the bat, and then just help you to refine that and work with you to make your idea fit with what we actually would publish, what would be a successful story for us. So please don't, you know, think that it's a pass-fail situation or it's a high-pressure scenario, because this is not going to be that kind of experience. And generally speaking, at AAP, we're pretty approachable and, you know, just nice, normal folk. I'd like to say that. I'd like to think that that's true. And we're not going to be, you know, complete spirit crushers. If you have a great idea and it's not for us, we're not going to be harsh about that. And we might just give you a bit of advice about, or at least give you a rundown as to why we're not the right audience for that piece of work. So if it's not successful for us, it doesn't mean it's a bad idea necessarily. It just means that we're not the right publishing organization for that. So that's something else for you to take away as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, Holly. I think they're really good tips on this is about AAP and the content AAP takes, but just because your story idea might not get up with AAP doesn't mean it's not a good story idea, and doesn't mean that that story doesn't belong somewhere and can't be told somewhere.
That's right.
And you know, the whole point of Our Truth, Our Way is to give our mob the agency to choose where they want to be published, and to understand the Australian media landscape better, so you know where your story is best placed, and what the ins and outs are, what the processes are when you do choose a media org. So this is really useful, and I think it might be worth talking about, because we've got a little bit of time left. We've got about 15 before the next mob are going to come in. So maybe it would be useful to talk about the internship opportunity with the fact-checking unit and what that would entail. It's not, I think you'll probably talk about this, but this won't be an opportunity for everyone in the Group A, because you do need them to come into the Sydney office as well. So any of the sort of requirements for the internship and what the opportunity looks like.
Yeah, thanks very much, Rachel, for giving me the chance to just chat this through. And I'm going to take complete advantage of that and also mention our cadet program. So like give an inch and I'll take a mile. So the intern idea came through some of the conversations we've been having internally and with Rachel and Tallulah, and the fact that we would love for our fact checking, particularly at this point in time where a lot of the work that we're doing is focused on the voice and the yes and no campaigns for the voice, and trying to ensure that there is scrutiny and rigor around what's being claimed, and that if people are making false claims, we work to try and minimize the spread of those claims and also provide factual information in its place. So that's kind of the baseline of the work. And at AAP, we just feel really passionately about making sure that First Nations people are part of the process to the greatest extent possible, that your perspectives and your lived experience and your talents and skills and views, they're all brought to the table as much as possible. And so it's my personal mission to try and bring some First Nations journalists or aspiring journalists into our fact-checking process right now, because we're talking so much about issues that are so central for First Nations people. The internship itself would be a paid opportunity. Rachel's mentioned that there is a requirement for some attendance in Sydney, which is where our head office is. That's simply because it's a much simpler and richer learning experience if you receive your training in person. And so we would like to do it in that way. It's possible that we may be able to support that to a limited extent, I have to say, but whatever work you do for us beyond that, or the days themselves that you are training, would be paid days. So it might be possible to offer some support for travel or accommodation, and that would be a conversation piece, because that's typically not how we would work it. But given my my goal is, I don't want something that small to get in the way of achieving this goal. So that would be an open conversation that we could have. The internship would be a bit of training over probably 2 days, and then you can go back to your preferred location, and it would almost be like we give you an assignment and you work on that assignment with our support, write an article and send it back to us. So we would then edit that article with you, explain what changes were being made, explain the rationale for them, give you the chance to amend and adjust and redraft. And then ultimately, hopefully we get fact checks that you have authored or substantially contributed to, because sometimes they're a collaboration, and we get them published on our site during this period, with your byline or without it, depending on what your comfort levels are. Some people, fact checking can be a bit of a divisive niche of journalism, so sometimes you might not be comfortable for you to have your byline on it, but there is definitely that opportunity for you to be bylined on fact check and compensated for your work. So that's the internship opportunity, and I'm happy to talk to anyone further about that or take any questions, but I'm just going to keep talking for 1 second about cadetships. So on Friday we pushed out into the world some recruitment ads for, I think it's going to be 4 positions, up to 4 positions. Again, we would love for at least half of those positions to be filled by First Nations journalists or aspiring journalists. So if you have ever had, the remotest inkling that you might like to write hard news for a national media organisation, then this is a once-a-year opportunity for you to be part of that process and to be seriously considered. So I just encourage that. And I've shared the ad with Rachel. I don't know if that's already out in the world or if I'm telling you stuff you already know, but I wanted to personally encourage anyone who has an interest in journalism and working for a national media organisation to put in your application, throw your hat in the ring.
Can I just add to that? Because I was going to say the AAP cadetship program, I think, is really worthwhile because you spend blocks of time doing different things, including in the Canberra Press Gallery and in sport. Now, I'm just using those two because they're kind of at opposite ends of the spectrum, but it doesn't matter what you go on to do in your career in media later, those 2 groundings will help you no matter what you do. Oh, one of the others is courts, isn't it? That's
right. Yeah, thanks, Rudy. I should have added that with some detail about it. Perfect, yeah.
Yeah, because the thing is, when you learn that stuff when you're starting out, it is just so helpful no matter what you do later on. So it doesn't matter if you want to go into entertainment journalism. If you have worked in sport, it will have helped you distill information quickly, and that makes a real difference no matter what you do.
Yeah, and half the sports stories end up in court. So you go through the court training, you'll be able to report fairly for the whole story all the way through. And then when they become a celebrity at the end of it and do their, biopic or whatever, you'll have your entertainment writing skills. But Rudy's right. It is a year-long program. I don't want to give you the wrong impression, but I call it a safe space to fail. So this is your opportunity to make all the mistakes with all of the care and support that you need to avoid making them again in the future and to address the issues that might have led to errors or problems or obstacles for you. And You do rotate through, so there's lots of variety in who you meet, who you work with, who you learn from. We have formal training plus on-the-job training, so it's not just out you go and ask questions. We have a check-in point every week or every 2 weeks where there's a debrief and you can discuss what you need support with, and we give you training about things like media ethics and media law and cultural diversity and inclusion, and it's a very comprehensive program, very well regarded. Honestly, if you look at half the resumes of people my age, they've been at, or younger, they've been at AAP at some point in their careers. And our current CEO, for example, was once an AAP cadet, and she's gone on to work at News Corp and the Sydney Morning Herald, and she was the editor of the Sydney Morning Herald before she came back to us. So it really is the gateway to an exciting and meaningful journalism career, if that's your bag. I know that we're talking to a group of people who probably want to write in lots of different ways, but if that's your thing, then chuck your CV together and put an application in.
Thanks, Holly and Rudy. And that link for the cadetship is in the email you received at the end of last week. So there were 2 job opportunities I shared in there, and so that one should be one of those links. Any deadlines, and also just in terms of the internship, is there a timeline on when that can happen? Are you hoping to have people start in the next few months? Is there something that you'll be offering?
Well, yeah, the next steps, yeah, that's a good question. So look, it's very flexible. I would like to have the majority of our stories about the referendum include First Nations journalists or First Nations people in their production. So I would, if anyone has any interest in being part of that, then we can look at what the timeline is that works for you. I'm ready now. I'm ready right now. If you're not, I get it. And we can figure out what might be the path forward on that front. Same way, I should just say, same to some degree with the cadetship. If you're still studying, for example, or you're not sure about how that might fit in, I would encourage you to at least open the door so that we can have conversations about what that might look like. So don't think I'm too busy right now, I can't fit anything else in. Have the conversation, or at least open the door to that conversation about how we might work with you to make this all possible and happen.
Fantastic. And so just in terms of key contacts, we've got the job description for the cadetship, which will probably have contact details on there. Are you the right person to be contacting for an internship? Just your email?
Yes, please. Just reach out to me if you're happy to do that, or I'm sure Rachel wouldn't mind being the intermediary if you'd prefer. Rachel, just putting you on the spot. My email address is probably in the invitation for today's meeting, so you're welcome to ping that whenever you want. As for the cadetship applications, there is a form that you have to fill out. So it would be a matter of filling out a form and uploading your CV within that form. And then I think there's 12 more days that form is open. After that period, we'll start reaching out to people and letting them know what the next step is, or what the next part of that process is.
Beautiful. That sounds great. I've got shared all your contact details with everybody. So you'll have all of that in your media partner folders on the Google Drive. We might wrap in a second just so everyone can have a quick tea break before our next meeting. But anything that I haven't covered, I'm looking at my questions and it feels like you've spoken about everything. And also Tamika and Blair, pop your hands up now if you do want to chuck any questions. But if not, yeah, you got a question, Blair?
I know internships typically run like 8 to 10 weeks, but I was just curious if there was a estimated timeline for the internship for the referendum fact checking.
Again, Blair, it's really flexible. So if you wanted to do it and you could give us, if you wanted to do it for 6 months, that's possible. Like, we're going to be fact checking the referendum right up until it happens. So, but if conversely, you think, oh, I can't really do it now, but I might be able to do it in between these other 2 things, or, but not later. It's possible to be flexible because it's new and I own it. It's my thing. I can do whatever I want with it. So we can make it work.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All good.
All right. And in an email, if the mob are interested in the fact-checking internship, what sort of info would you like them to include at the beginning? Do you want their CVs up front?
If you have one that's ready to go, then sure, definitely include it. But you know, it'd be great to hear why you might want to be part of it, whether you have an interest in national media or hard news reporting and you'd like to spend time at AAP. That's just as valid as I'm super passionate about fact checking, which I have to say is probably not a common position to be coming from. It's a really interesting area, but it's just it's a small niche right now. We'd like to make it come out of that silo and be part of what everyone's doing all the time. But for now, it sort of exists in its own lane. But yeah, we're happy to take applications for no matter what the motive is. If you have an interest, even if it's not directly related to fact checking, but you think that might advance you in some other way, then I'm not going to, you know, put a line through you. Like, I just would like to offer this opportunity for you guys, as much as for our own purposes of including those voices, but for the development opportunity that it represents for young writers like the Our Truth, Our Way program participants. It's just another way you can stretch yourself, another skill set to include in your kit bag for whatever way you want to apply it in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Holly. Thanks, Rudy. Anything else from you, Rudy, that I missed?
No, just thanks and lovely to see you and good luck. I think, you know, this is a great program, and I would just encourage anybody, all of you, all of the participants, to think about what you would like to get out of it. And if you need advice, please feel free to contact me. Rachel's got my dates, or, you know, you could probably track me down on socials. Not that I try to go there that much anymore, but but yeah, and good luck with your writing. I love journalism and storytelling, and I think it is a great career. So best of luck with whatever you decide to do.
Here.
Thank you so much. It's really lovely to hear from you both. Feel free to pop out, and Blair and Tamika stay on the call, but I'll let you have a break before the next thing. So thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Nice to meet you all, and nice to see you again, Rachel. I'll talk to you guys all later.
See you all too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Rudy. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
All righty. I'm going to pause the recording here for a second. So just to kick off the second meet and greet, I'll just acknowledge country again. Oh, we've got Marley in the waiting room. I'll just let her in. Hey, Marley, thanks for joining.
No worries. I'm a little bit technologically inept at the moment because I didn't realize I was in the wrong one. So all good.
All good, you're here now. We're just kicking off. So I just want to start by saying happy NAIDOC week, everybody. Coming here from Gadigal land in so-called Sydney. I always like to pay respects to this country because it's looked after me for a good 8 years now. And I feel really grateful that I was able to spend the beginning of NAIDOC week with Auntie Rhonda Dix at Grosvenor and be smoked on Gadigal land to begin this week. So my deepest respects to this place, and want to acknowledge where you're all coming from. Marley, Gemma and Rona, you can probably introduce where you're coming from and talk a bit about yourselves in your own introductions. But I thought first we'd kick off with just Blair and Tamika, just saying your names and your mob and where you come from.
Yeah, hey everyone. My name's Blair. I'm currently on Awabakal country in Newcastle, but I'm originally Kempsey boy, Dungutty mob. Yeah, thanks for coming along.
Beautiful. And Tamika, if you're there, sis. Tamika's not on right now, but we can introduce her in just a moment. So we might start with Rona. Do you want to talk a little bit about yourself and where you come from, common ground, what your position is there, and then introduce your team?
Yeah, awesome. Excited to be here. So excited to meet you, Blair and Tamika, and hopefully we get to meet some of the other mob that will be watching this recording afterwards. Happy NAIDOC week. My name is Rona Numbula Glyn McDonald. I'm a Kadich woman from the Central Desert, grew up on Aranda country in Mbantua, also known as Alice Springs, and my family are from a place called Ilanjau, which is about 350 kilometers up the Stuart Highway. I am currently calling in from Wurundjeri country down in Naarm, and it's freezing cold. I literally had to leave the office today to like go buy this little throw that I put on my knees. I'm like not built for this cold country at the moment. We recently came back from a trip with the team up on Kuku-Yalanji country in Cairns, so was really settling into the sweat and bullets and feeling the sun on my back. So I'm just, yeah, need to spend some more time adjusting to this country down here. So I am the founder of Common Ground and yeah, now the CEO, and Common Ground is a First Nations led, operated and governed not-for-profit who work with mob across the continent to amplify voice and embed our knowledges across different systems. For me, I was really privileged to grow up like all of us in, you know, families of storytellers with deep connections to story that have been held since the first moments of time. But more specifically, I grew up in a family of filmmakers and saw the power of camera and lenses from a young age in shining a mirror up to Australia and creating space for our communities to tell our stories, our own ways as a form of healing and a form of resistance. And that power of story has been a core focus in a lot of my work. And Common Ground was built from a space of recognizing that we needed more opportunities for mob from all different spaces across this continent to have opportunities to tell our stories, whether that's through film, whether that's through writing or poetry or photography. Story comes in so many forms. And as an organization, we now are in a position to back lots of amazing storytellers, and we have a website and a platform that a lot of people come to hear voices from mob across the continent, and we work on projects in the education system. So our work is quite vast, and you know, I'm sure the team will be able to speak a little bit more to that. But for us, really the core of our work is about backing mob to tell stories, and we're really excited to be part of this program and hopefully create some space for you mob to be able to tell your stories your own ways and spin yarns and be able to record knowledges in ways that are grounded in your connections and your relationships. Yeah, and I'm privileged to work with the two that we have in the room today, which is Gemma and Marley. I'll throw to Gemma to introduce herself, but we're a pretty small team. As a bit more context, we've got just 7 at the moment, seven young fellas from across the continent. We're all pretty young, and I think that's really exciting in that we're always learning and relearning and unlearning things together, and we're quite a agile kind of space in the sense that being small means we're a close family and we're able to shift to meet the needs of everyone we work with, which yeah, that's it. That's from me. I'll pass over to Gemma.
Thanks, Rona. I'm also very cold on Wadandi Noongar country. I'm sitting next to the heater in this house that I'm house sitting for at the moment. And I'm caring for this big, beautiful dog, Alfie. And I am the communications manager at Common Ground. I'm Wiradjuri, Nyamba and Barkindji from Central New South Wales. All of those 3 lineages are on my mum's side, and then my dad's side is mostly Italian. So two cultures that are incredibly proud and love tradition, love biggest feeds. They have a lot of similarities, but also a lot of differences as well. So very grateful to grow up in these 2 cultures. But I actually grew up on the coast on Moromai country as well. So yeah, it's another important thing I like to acknowledge when I introduce myself, is that I grew up off country. And yeah, currently in the process of going back to country quite often. I just came back from Wiradjuri country, and I'm learning Wiradjuri language, relearning Wiradjuri language, I should say. And yeah, it's a little bit about me. I'm super excited about this program as well. And yeah, as Rona said, we're not a traditional media or news outlet. And while we do welcome, all different types of writers like journalists or creative writing, it's a really exciting space for mob to be able to tell our stories our ways, regardless of where you come from or where your training is or what your interests are. Yeah, we kind of make space for everyone to have agency over how you tell your stories and be authors on your own terms. So yeah, that's my little spiel. I'll pass on to the deadly Marley.
Thanks, Jim. My name is Marley Hollow-Clark. I am a Yamal Yari person from the Pilbara. I also grew up off country. I also have Japanese heritage. So my ancestry comes from my maternal side, which is very fun. The Japanese comes from my dad's mother's side, which is very exciting because I grew up in a very interesting household with lots of Asian influences and not realizing that it was not like the most common thing for a lot of people. While also I grew up in Lutruwita down in Tassie as well, which is like a very predominantly like white area, and being very young in that space, but going to boarding school and all that stuff. So it's very interesting the way that it shaped my growing up. But a lot of my family was removed from the Pilbara, and so we actually spent a lot of time in the territory. So I was born in Alice Springs and Bartwa, and a lot of family up through the whole centre between Darwin and Alice, which is very fun. But I'm currently in Meanjin. I live here in Brisbane after moving up here 6 months ago and being in for 9 years beforehand, going to uni, doing my thing, and met Rona at uni as well, which is very exciting. But I've been part of the team since, when is it, January? So just past my 6-month mark off probation, which is very exciting. And I'm just like so stoked to be working with such a deadly team and all the creators, and still coming off that high of our Cape York trip, which was just like the best thing that's happened in a long time, very needed, and such a close-knit group, considering most of us were strangers and just like internet friends for a long time, which is very exciting. But yeah, I'm keen to hear about some stuff, and very active on social media. So hit us with a DM, which is great. But yeah, that's me.
Beautiful. Thanks, Yumov. It sounds like you had the best time up in Cairns. Been hearing about this trip from Rona. Very jealous this time of year. My little desert bones aren't handling Gadigal weather too well. Look, we've got until 3 p.m, so I might get straight into it. And feel free to put your hand up, whoever in the team is best placed to ask this question. We've lost Tamika for now. I think had a connection issue, but if you have a question, Blair, just feel free to use the little emoji thingy. Otherwise, I'm just going to go through, and this is going to be shared as a video with everybody so that they can hear from all the media partners when it's not NAIDOC week, and people can sit down and have a cuppa and listen to what you have to say. So on your media profile, you talked about two of the things that are important to Common Ground when you publish, your themes and the types of content. And so you talk through the content themes of Common Ground being people, country, and truth-telling, which you spoke a bit about just then, Rona. Could you give some examples of the sorts of stories on Common Ground that fall into those categories, to give an idea of how storytellers can approach telling yarns about people, country, and truth-telling?
Yeah, for sure. I can jump in. I think maybe some context around the journey of our themes could be helpful. So originally our themes or our categories were people, knowledge, history, I think, from memory. So those were the original ones. And then I think probably about a year ago, we were trying to think how we can, have a stronger content and information architecture, just because knowledge is so broad, and all of the pieces were knowledge. So we thought people, country, and truth-telling have a bit more clear distinctions. Also acknowledging that they're so interrelated as well. So often an article that someone pitches will have elements of all three of those. So we do just in that case, we just put that article in the one that it most resonates with, because the themes are mainly for our audience to be able to navigate our website and yeah, for the user experience, I guess, rather than actually categorizing our stories. Like that's not really that helpful for us, but it is helpful for the audience and for non-Indigenous people in particular. But some examples would be for people, just anything that's people-centered and mob-centered. So if someone did an article about a NAIDOC event that they went to and there was a deadly dance group, like that would probably fall into the people side. And then truth telling, there's a lot of that's like a lot of historical kind of articles or films. So for an example, if you find out about a local story of maybe like colonial contact for the first instance of colonial contact in your local area or in your small town, like that would be a good example of like a truth-telling piece, because we're rewriting that history that was told from a colonial perspective, and we're rewriting it in our own voice. So that's a good example of truth-telling. Also anything about like place names and calling places by their rightful names would also fall under truth-telling. And then countries, anything that's country-centered, which again is like a lot of our stories are country-centered, even when they're people-centered, because they're so interrelated. But some examples could be like writing a story about a climate action organization like Our Islands, Our Home, or writing a story about traditional farming and agriculture, all of those types of things.
Yeah, beautiful. And obviously for anyone listening to this, you can always just go to Common Ground, have a look at all the yarns that you have on your website. Could you talk us through the different mediums that Common Ground publishes and works in? Because you're not just in the writing space, you do audio and video as well. And I suppose anything that might fall a little bit outside of that. So whether you publish artwork or cartoons from Mob, graphics from Mob. And when it comes to the written side as well, the types of written articles you're interested in publishing. So I know you've talked about first person style writing and opinion pieces. Is there a space for interviews and longer feature articles? And what are your parameters around those things? So word limit and things like that.
I can jump in, but Rona and Marley, if I miss anything, please jump in as well. So I think, again, I'll start with the history of Common Ground. We did start as a very humble platform of just articles, and most of the articles were informative written articles. So there wasn't much, there wasn't much creative writing yet. There wasn't, it was all very educational pieces, I guess. But as we've evolved and grown, we've definitely explored some more creative writing. We've published animation before. So Tish King worked with an animator to have one of her poems animated called Nuku. So that's on our website. But yeah, we're pretty much in a space now where if Mob want to tell their story in a certain way, we're going to try and make it work. So whether that's graphics or whether it's like art on a canvas, even though we're a predominantly digital platform, we'll still try and get a digital version of it or something. We're pretty open to exploring anything at this point, but still we are mainly, we mainly have informative written articles still. Lots of images, lots of photography, definitely moving more into the film space as well, especially with our other team member, Talia. She's really great at editing films and producing films and directing films. So she has a great skill set that I lack. So we're definitely exploring more films as well. But yeah, in terms of word count, we generally try to stick within like 700 to 1200 words as like a maximum. Just because we do notice like the drop off, the longer the article is, the more of our audience drop off. And also just thinking about accessibility as well. So that's like another really important thing that we center in all of our work, is thinking about how can we make this content accessible? How can we make it readable so that the majority of people can read it? So short sentences, direct, like active voice as well tends to be easier to read than like a passive voice. Does anyone want to jump in, Rena or Molly?
You nailed it, Jem. I think, you asked as well, Rach, about interview style. I think we've had some really beautiful articles where like people have literally sat with one of their elders or with family and just had a big old yarn with someone that they hold relationship with, and like actually created space for that person's voice to just shine through, like with really minimal edits, to really give that space for that storytelling. And that, I think, is a really beautiful opportunity. Like for us, the published work is one thing, like the output of something, yes, is important, but for us, we really want to focus on process, and any way that we can support and back people, particularly young people, anyone, to be able to like have that time to sit on country, or to have that space with, whether it's an elder or another person in community, like that's where a lot of, we think the deep impact of this storytelling lies. So we'll do things like, I think we mentioned in the deck that, if you're working on a content piece with us or pitching to us, we'd want anyone that you're interviewing as part of that, if you decide to interview someone, to also be paid in the process, and just really honouring that time and energy that it takes, and that space that is held when you sit with someone, and also to be trusted with their words and their perspective and their story.
That's really beautiful to hear about. Your offer to pay interviewees, because it's something that straight journalistic publishers won't do, and so it's good to know that if you are interested in interviewing someone, but you feel really nervous about approaching, say, a knowledge holder in your family about sharing their yarn because they might not be getting as much out of it, that there are places for these yarns where their knowledge is equally respected as the person who's telling the story or sharing the story. It's a really good insight for, I think, the mob in this crew who might be interested in looking at other ways of telling stories that don't fall into these straight journalism narratives. Marley, did you have something to add there? I didn't want to interrupt before you all had a chance to speak.
Yeah, I was kind of just going to echo the fact that we really focus on process for a lot of the beginnings of ideas that people have. And in the last couple of months that I've been working, even with the Cape York trip, that having yarns with people and helping develop ideas, if they want to sit with a knowledge holder in their family, and that might be the first idea they have, and kind of workshopping ideas of how that will like work through and how we'll be able to publish it, and looking at their skill sets in terms of like either pairing them up, this is my cat Momo, pairing them up with maybe a writer or a photographer or something like that as well, to get both of their perspectives across and have some visual elements that also looks into the accessibility as well. So it's not just words, if that's also something people are interested in. And we really try and build on those relationships with people that we have and make sure people feel heard and seen in those aspects as well. So it's big like process and like the trust that goes into sitting with a knowledge holder or family member as well, that we try not to edit as much, as like grammar and stuff is different, but like in terms of information sharing, that is a big thing that we take really seriously in terms of like lack of editing and making sure that it's very true to what is been submitted as well. So yeah, kind of just very emergent in the way that we work with our creators and people that submit ideas to us as well, to make sure we can authentically represent themselves, their families, and like the mobs that they are working with as well. But yeah.
That's great. Yeah, no, it's always really nice to hear what the editing process is like and how involved it is before pitching, because I think it can take a lot of mob by surprise when they start their yarn, get to the end, submit it, and then all of a sudden it doesn't look anything like the original because they weren't given a heads up on what the editing process is like. So it's really nice to hear, you know, our mob really backing the voices, the authenticity of our stories. One of the biggest questions I've been getting from fellas in the group is around pitching and how do you pitch to Common Ground? What makes a good pitch? What are you looking for when you have that first contact with a storyteller?
Marley kind of, briefly just then had a yarn about, how people will approach us. So we don't really have a formal pitching process, but we do have, people who are open to hearing pitches at all times throughout the year. So both me and Marley, you can submit pitches to us, and essentially just an email or even a phone call, like whatever suits the author or creator best. And just like telling us a little bit about your idea, telling us who you want to interview, just so we can prepare on our side, because we do pay interviewees. It's good for us to know like how many people you want to interview, who they are, just so we can get those payments ready. But essentially in your pitch, I'd say have like a working title, have your concept, have your format as well. So is it an audio piece? Is it a written article? Is it a gallery or like photographic essay? Is it a film? And then also like an estimated submission date. So probably the other thing that's a little bit different about Common Ground is we don't really have we don't have to map our content to like a specific timeline or to the news cycle or anything like that. So we kind of let contributors like dictate their own submission date and their own timeline. So instead of us saying like we need this piece by the 10th of July, we just make space for the creators to tell us like, I think I can have this ready, or like I will aim to have this ready by the 10th of July, and then we put that into our calendars, and then that just means that we can keep track of when you should be done, and so we can check in and those kinds of things, see if you need any extra support throughout the process. But essentially just an email or a phone call letting us know your idea. And then also if you need anything from us. So sometimes people will say like, I have this idea, but I don't know how to execute it. Like I don't know the right person to interview, or I don't have any images for this piece. So we can really step in and connect you with that deadly elder or like academic or expert that you want to talk to for your article. Or we can hook you up with one of our other contributors who is like a really deadly photographer, like Marley said before. So we can kind of support in the process as well. I think that's about it. Knowing, the submission date, knowing when you think you can have it done by is important as well, just so we can prepare on our end and put it into our content calendar. But the big difference is that we let you decide when you can submit. And also like we're very flexible as well, like things come up all the time. NAIDOC week events, sorry business. We're very emergent and flexible when it comes to timelines. We can, like Rena was saying before, like we're a very small team, which means we're pretty agile and can kind of like work quite flexibly. And is that, did anyone else have anything to?
I was going to say, in addition, like the pitching is really just like the start of a yarn, right? And like narrowing down on like, this may be the focus, this is the format, this is what you might need help with. But we're on the journey with you. And if that changes, like you might yarn to someone and all this stuff comes from them that they share beyond what you'd expected. And actually you're like, oh, wow, there's like actually maybe 2 pieces here. Or I think that theme that I thought was the theme needs to be different because I've heard from this person that actually this is more important to them. So yeah, it's a two-way yarn. It's a relationship from our side. So, you know, we'll be there to shift if you need to shift the kind of theme of where it's going or what it's going to look like, or you capture some deadly photos and you're like, actually it should be a photo essay, or, you know, like we're open to being on that journey with you. So we're pretty chill. Gemma's like, there's a submission date, but it can change. And it does change, you know, like sometimes someone will be like, we have this piece that we want to do, and they're like collabing on a piece, it'll be ready in like a couple of weeks. Sometimes it'll be like, oh, 6 months. So like kicking it down the road. But you know, things happen when they're meant to. And I know that the program that everyone's going through and does have timelines, but you know, ongoing as an organization and a storytelling place, we really are there for ongoing yarns and that kind of collaborative way of operating together.
Honestly, this flexibility is like a storyteller's dream.
Yeah.
That freedom with your deadlines. So Gemma, were you going to add something?
I was just going to, you reminded me of something, Rona, because most of the content we publish is like timeless or evergreen. That's why we can be really, flexible with our timelines. So yeah, most of the pieces that we publish are timeless. So it's not like traditional news where it might be about, God, I haven't read traditional news in a while, but it might be like about a current event or like current affairs. And so like, that's why you really need to publish it like yesterday. Whereas our content will be more like, it's about your people or your country or, it's just more evergreen. So that's something to consider as well. If you do want to pitch an article that's like tied to an event, then maybe that will put a little bit more of a time pressure on it. But yeah, most of the time, or so far historically, most of our content has been quite evergreen and timeless.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thinking about the sorts of story you're pitching, because we also, we have multiple media partners, and if someone has a hard news, breaking news story, they might want to take it somewhere else, or if they have a more timeless yarn that, it's just an oral story from an elder in their community, it's nice to know that you've got these options, places where they can sit, and they'll be the same story that it needs to be a year from now. I've got a couple other questions, but I might pause and just check. Blair, have you got any questions at this stage?
No questions here.
Yeah, too easy. Thanks, Blair. Another thing that I've yarned with you about before, Rona, is that you don't always just take pictures. Sometimes you commission stories. You have your own ideas at Common Ground and you like to throw them out to mob. Are there any yarns that you're looking to commission at the moment, or how do the Mob in Our Truth, Our Way find out about yarns you might be commissioning?
Gem's got some ideas. Back to you, Gem.
We have like a board. We have so many ideas. We have like a massive board on our project management tool that we use, Asana, that has lots of different ideas. So I'm just quickly getting it up. But we do, again, like those 3 themes, people, country, truth telling, we have lots of different things and ideas underneath those 3 themes. But essentially, a lot of our ideas come from thinking about things we want our audience to learn about. So for example, like one of the ideas is an article on reparations, an article on sovereignty, and like kind of explain articles for all these types of words that hold a lot of weight and are really important, but maybe not everyone has a grasp of them. In particular, non-Indigenous people might not have a grasp of them from a First Nations lens, or they've heard about sovereignty or like matriarchy, for instance, like they've heard about this term, but the context in which they've learnt about it is not the right context for us. So when a First Nations person explains these terms or yarns about these terms, it's so different from like reading like the Cambridge Dictionary version. So yeah, that's a lot of our ideas come from, what do we wish people knew?
Including with mob as well, like mob that don't have access to, all the same conversations that people do in certain kind of places with more proximity to academics and stuff like that. So like creating space, like for example, like with the Voice coming up, sorry, not the Voice, the referendum coming up, one of the things that we're kind of focusing on is creating space for really informative education content, which Marley's been working on with some deadly writers. But I guess in terms of like upcoming focuses, we're definitely looking at how we can amplify diverse perspectives from mob on the upcoming referendum. So if that's something that people are interested in being part of a content series on, we're going to be reaching out to a whole heap of writers and creators to share their perspectives and ensure that multiple voices are heard in the conversation, not just the loud and big mouths, particularly, younger mob and our elders and people that don't always get that kind of microphone on TV or on the radio. So that's, some things that we're wanting to commission. But also, Gemma, you had a piece, or we were talking about doing a series looking at the climate movement and amplifying the work of organisations and movements from across the continent that are tied to place. So that's another thing that we're looking at. But I think knowing who in this crew is keen to like keep a relationship and form a relationship with common ground, like, within this program or beyond this program, knowing that you have capacity or interested in hearing about some of these things that we're working on in these series that we're focusing on that might have, a whole suite and collective of writers or creators coming together to respond to a theme. Just knowing that you're in and you're keen means that we can put you on, an emailing list and as well as stay in touch and be hot on the DMs, chasing you if we have ideas for things that we think you might be a good fit for. But I think the other thing is also knowing like where you might want to sit in the spectrum of storytelling, like knowing that you've got this experience, but you wanted to try this kind of experience, and maybe you want to start trying some photography things, or this is the knowledge that you hold or the place that you're tied to, so you feel comfortable speaking from that place. Knowing those things, I think, is really, really important for our team to then know like who we reach out to, and so it does feel like there could be that right fit from the very beginning, and you don't get like put with the like, oh, can you write a piece about legal assertions of sovereignty, and you're like, what? I'm not a lawyer. So like just knowing where's that place that you feel really good and you feel confident, so we can build from that and not throw you things that are like way left of field.
I think in terms of process as well, just emailing one of us, me or Marley, and saying like, hey, like I'm so and so and I'm really interested in caring for country, or like I'm studying science, so do you have any pictures that you think would be aligned, and we can throw things to you, because I'm guaranteed we do. And then as Rona said, we'll also, once we get to know you, we will probably, like if we think of something that you would be really deadly for, I think Phoebe might be doing this program.
Phoebe's doing it,
yeah. So for instance, I was like, Phoebe, she is studying law, I'm going to slide into her DMs and see if she wants to write a piece on First Nations legal systems, which she did, and it's amazing, and everyone should go read it. So we will also just like, we will slide into your DMs if we have ideas, once we get to know what you're interested in and where your intersections lie. Did you have something to add, Marley? Sorry, I think
No, I was literally just going to say that I know for me, I'm a bit of a stalker on Instagram and TikTok. So if people are posting stuff that they're interested and passionate about, then I'll normally like follow along and kind of just be in the background and just see how things are going. And if there's something that people are continually posting about or talking about, and doing like little Instagram story essays as well, like a lot of that can be turned into a bigger idea as well. that will kind of fit into some of the work that we're already doing, and do different platforms as well. And so like really interested in like video essays on TikTok as well, because that's a big space for educational, but also the accessibility of listening to something like that instead of reading. And so yeah, sometimes if we see videos like on TikTok, because that's my like main interest at the moment, is yeah, just kind of resharing or like sliding into DMs and kind of thinking about stuff like that. Like a lot of conversations that I had at NAIDOC Awards on the weekend, I was just like, oh, this would be a really good thing if you want to do this as an article, and me half pitching to people in like the lines at clubs on the weekend. I was just like, okay, maybe not right now, but yeah, the ideas that we have, there's just so many, and it's like not always like super like heavy serious content as well. Like we are in that space of a lot of like Black people are just funny as well, and so some humor and like some real stories and like growing up and kind of the diversity of interests of a lot of our people as well. And so looking at all those different types of content as well. So I think that's also something to remember and kind of think about, that if you wanted to do obviously like very funny, heavy stuff at the same time, or like just want to have it, make a funny video about like NAIDOC, or like an elder doing something funny, that's just like the classic elder thing to do. But yeah, so kind of look at the diversity and what you're thinking about and how that will kind of fit into what we do, but also like stay true to who you are as storytellers, and the way that you represent yourselves is something that's really of interest to us as well.
Thanks, Marley. We're getting close to the end. You touched on so much, and I think you raised a really good point with timelines, which I'll reiterate here. But with our Truth Our Way, we have like loose timelines of having something published by October, but we also have a caveat to say that if you are working on something that needs more time, if it's a collaborative project, or if it's just something that really does just need, you know, a bit more time to speak to the right people, to make sure you follow cultural protocol, to make sure that you've had time to get through your day-to-day, because the participants in our Truth Our Way all have their own things going on. We're not expecting a complete piece by October if it's not the right time for that piece to be published. Before we wrap up, I just want to say a big thank you, and I suppose give you 2 minutes if possible to yarn about any other opportunities outside of our Truth Our Way, because we've got 15 young mob who will tune into this video, and I'll be giving them updates based on the notes I'm taking as well. But 15 young people who are probably really keen for job opportunities as well, and other things outside of this program, if you have anything coming up.
Deadly. Well, we'd love to meet you all, whether it's, you know, between now and October, probably not possible, but if you like, you know, what you're hearing and you like to connect, please reach out, and we can all, you know, have yarns online. Even if you don't, you know, pitch this time around, maybe sometime in the future. But we're going to have some exciting things happening over the next year, including we'll be doing a seed grant round. So some small seed grants for storytellers and creators to strengthen their storytelling practice, which is likely looking like multi-platform content. So if you have an idea for something that, you know, is a bit more than an article, we are so here to explore that as well. And those kind of seed grant rounds will be open to anyone from the public. So I think staying in touch with us, but also on our social media to keep an eye on those. As well as, like, you know, a lot of what we've talked about and what a lot of the examples we've shared have been, you know, stories and kind of smaller content pieces. We do get pictures from storytellers that we've engaged with a couple of times that might be like, can you fly me to this place so that I can spend some time sitting on country with these people and create, you know, a few things from that. And we generally have some pretty awesome yarns that happen from that moment, and we have backed people to kind of go on you know, more extended journeys in creating a content piece, and not just like, you know, we'll pay you X amount of money to write this number of words or provide this many photos. So yeah, I'd say like starting with something with us and then growing to that is a really great opportunity, and it's really special what can happen when people come with some of those bigger pictures, and we're here to really back them and work with you to strengthen your storytelling capacity, but also to be able to tell those big yarns. I'm looking at time. I'm like, that's it. Wrap it up, Rona.
That was perfect. Nice one, sis. Thank you. Blair, did you have any questions before we wrap up?
Nah, no questions. That was amazing. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, that was really good. Thank you, Marley, Gemma, and Rona. Super grateful to have you mob partnered with us. We'll be sharing all of this plus my notes with everybody. I already know there's been a little bit of interest, a bit of interest in going to Common Ground. So it'll be really good to link you up with some of the mob in the coming weeks to yarn about pictures. And I really like the flexible approach, especially if people don't have a full idea, your offer to yarn it through and to really flesh it out before they get to the actual storytelling part of it. Really generous of you, Mob. So thank you. I'll let you go. Blair, stay on. We're going to have a quick break and then we've got Pinterest coming up. So thank you, Mob.
Do good. Thanks. See you. Nice to meet you, Blair.
See yous.
So I'd just like to begin by saying happy NAIDOC to everybody. I'll acknowledge the country that I'm on. I'm on Gadigal land in so-called Sydney, beautiful home of mine for 8 years now, but I'm a Warlpiri woman from Central Desert in the Northern Territory. So it's a long way from where I'm usually from. Maybe to start with, I'll get Blair to introduce himself quickly and say who you are, who's your mob, where you're from, and then we'll go around and introduce everyone at Pinterest.
Thanks, Rachel. My name's Blair. I'm a Dunghutti man who grew up in Kempsey, and I'm currently living on a Wabakal country down in Newcastle, where I'm studying at university.
Thanks, Blair. Justine, do you want to kick us off and then introduce your team?
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, happy NAIDOC. I hope you guys are enjoying the celebrations that have been happening this week. It's all over my feed and yeah, love seeing it. My name's Justine. I am the editorial manager at Pinterest for Australia. Also living on Gadigal land, where I've kind of, spent most of my life growing up. And yeah, today I've invited the lovely Jace and Bella, who I work very, very closely with. I'll let them introduce themselves, but that's who's joining us today.
Cool, I'll jump in. Thanks, Justine. I think we're all on Gadigal land, actually. We're all Sydney based. My name's Jace. I look after our content partnerships side of the business. So Bella's a part of that team. Bella, you can intro yourself in a sec. But really what we're focused on is helping our content suppliers, whether they're creators, publishers, brands, really kind of grow and find success with the content that they create on the platform. So yeah, over to you, Bella.
Hey everyone, I am Bella. I'm the Strategic Partnership Manager. I work really closely with Jace and Justine. As Jace mentioned, I look after a range of creators, publishers, and brands, just content suppliers. And I like to start off with what I'm currently pinning. And it's always a question I ask most people, but I'm currently pinning easy recipes for dinner because I'm being lazy, and also Egyptian like clothing aesthetic because I'm going to Egypt later this year.
Oh my God, that sounds beautiful. I'm so jealous. I think a good place to start is with that word you brought up, Bella, because I've got a Pinterest account I've used over the years, but and I know a lot of mob do, but not many of us know about the storytelling capacity and abilities of Pinterest as a platform. You just use the word pinning. Can you talk a bit about that and then expand into some of the storytelling that you can do on Pinterest?
Yeah, sure. Jace, did you want to jump in, or you're happy for me to take it? Yes. So Pinterest is a platform where pinners every single day come to seek inspiration to create a life that they love, and what that really means is there's when you think of Pinterest, you think of it as a visual search engine. So when you think of Google, you generally go to Google to type in something that you're really requiring an answer for. And Pinterest just does that in a really beautiful visual way that, even with the interface and the layout of being able to get multiple different visuals, and you're really able to choose content or let it steer you in a way that you can kind of steer the content in the direction that you're needing. So, you know, I work across a range of different verticals, from fashion to food to DIY and home. So it's it's a place where you really are the hero in your own story, as opposed to other platforms. Pinterest is also, when you think about it, probably more so on that planning versus like the present or the past. So usually pinners will come to Pinterest with a plan, whether, you know, like I said, it might be, what do you want to cook for dinner tonight, if you're wanting a really beautiful soup or something like that, because it's quite cold in Sydney at the moment. Or, you know, maybe it's a really big milestone in your life, like I'm planning a wedding, so I've been using Pinterest to also plan a wedding. But yeah, you really are the master of your own destiny when it comes to a platform like Pinterest.
And I'll just jump in real quick. That like Bella, you nailed it, as always. But I think, like, in terms of talking about pinning, so I guess the word pins and content is interchangeable on the platform. So when we talk about pinning, it's really about saving the most inspirational content that really relates to that individual user, and then saving it to a board. So what's really integral to our platform is obviously being able to, as Bella said, plan for the future. And to do that, our users, they jump on the platform, they'll save the most inspirational stuff that they see and find. They'll save that to their own boards. That's what we call pinning. And then they kind of work on all that information and all that inspiration they've got, and they apply that into their own lives. So whether that's, as Bella said, cooking a recipe that night, all the way to those bigger kind of life moments like planning a wedding.
Beautiful. What are some examples of the First Nations content creators that you've worked with, and the sorts of things you're pushing out that are relevant to our communities?
We're doing a lot, and a lot. And I'm going to throw to Justine here, because Justine has been our like champion in this space in terms of she owns the editorial surfaces for Australia. So Justine, take it away.
Yeah, no worries. So that's an awesome question, Rachel. So yeah, we've been doing a lot in the way of kind of showcasing, you know, diversity, diverse ideas, diverse creators, not just in terms of, you know, like what your ethnic background might be, but, you know, sexuality, identity, like how you might identify, body types, all kinds of things. And really, you know, like representation is so important to Pinterest. Like I know all platforms say that, but really, like we want to make sure that it's showing, like outside of being tokenistic, like through the actual way that you create content on the platform too. Like we're all about positivity. And so, you know, for anyone that does want to come and create on Pinterest, because we are really ramping up, you know, like the messaging of us as a platform that enables storytelling, like you're saying. So we're welcoming creators and we're helping them succeed and tell their stories on the platform. Is in the tools that they use to create the content. So we have a creator code that you have to kind of like, you know, say yes to when you post content. And it's really all about being kind, like making sure that, you know, the content is kind, like everyone, you know, we want to encourage authentic voices and storytelling, but we want to make sure that it's not kind of taking away from, you know, a user's experience or it's impacting them negatively. So yeah, like we want to make sure that things, you know, that we're also kind of showcasing the diversity outside of just like a NAIDOC moment. So really it's all about like a long-term consistent, you know, making sure we're being consistent in working with First Nations creators, whether that's, you know, in the forefront or in the background, and also with the ideas that we're showcasing. So you asked what we're doing at the moment. So obviously NAIDOC is a big is a big moment for us, and for everybody. We make sure that we're showcasing, you know, NAIDOC content and creators from Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander communities throughout the entire month, but also outside of NAIDOC. Like, we want to make sure that we're featuring that diversity and that representation all month long. So, all year long. So, you know, Jace and Bella have worked with a whole group of First Nations creators outside of just NAIDOC. Like, we worked with, and they'll know, but we worked with Mason for Pride, for example. We worked with Lakari Pitt, who's a lovely artist. You know, outside of like Pinterest moments, like she's come into our office and painted a beautiful mural on the Pinterest office that everyone can see straight away. We've also gotten her to come in and do a few speaking opportunities for us internally. And then we also like engage her to create like inspirational content for us on Pinterest for summertime, for example. So definitely looking outside of these, you know, heavy kinds of like First Nations moments, and just having that diversity all year round. But in terms of the features, we do have spaces called editorial surfaces. And really that's just a way of like me programming like inspirational article ideas, or featuring awesome creators and their content on certain surfaces of Pinterest. And again, just making sure that we're, you know, being like showcasing that full representation of all the identities within Australia is really important as well with the content that we showcase.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've seen a few of the pieces of content coming out for NAIDOC. It's so cool. And Mesa's stuff was deadly. If somebody in our crew had a story idea for Pinterest, what is the best process for pitching a yarn?
I'll let, Jace, did you want to step in for this?
Look, I can jump in. I mean, in terms of the process for pitching or coming up with ideas, I think, you know, all ideas are relevant and all ideas have a place on Pinterest. But the one thing that I always say to people when they're thinking about what those ideas should be is they should really fall in the categories of being inspirational, because again, we're a platform about inspiration. Second to that would be an educational element. So going back to our users, they come to the platform and they're saving the most inspirational content. So what can someone take away from the content that you're creating? And then I guess thirdly, that entertainment factor. So, you know, we're a platform of not just photos, but also video. So particularly when it comes to video content, if you're coming up with whatever your idea is, definitely have that entertainment element in the background as well, because that will really enhance the educational and the inspirational element of the content as well.
That's really helpful. It might be worth talking about the video content on Pinterest and just the sorts of specs that you need in order for it to be uploaded correctly. So does Pinterest take content that can be shot on anyone's smartphone? Do you need something that's a little bit more flashy? Great. And
no, definitely. No, we don't need the flashy stuff. So if I'm honest, the most raw and authentic content really is these days shot on a mobile phone, because that's when people really are able to probably give the best form of storytelling for a mobile audience. So our audience that kind of consumes on the platform, we're sitting at around just over 80% now coming from mobile. So I guess like it makes sense then for content creators, whether they be, you know, an individual, a brand or a publisher, to also be kind of creating content from a mobile as well. I think gone are the days of this glossy magazine style images, and that's all that Pinterest kind of, maybe the perception of Pinterest once was. It's definitely not the case right now. And, you know, what we do see is obviously the content needs to be lit well, you know, no background sounds, really kind of make sure that you're able to speak clearly if there's voiceover, if you're speaking to camera, but you really don't need all the bells and whistles in terms of the full production crew to bring your storytelling to life.
Great. And the desired length is usually between 30 and 60 seconds. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I wouldn't be going anywhere over 60 seconds. 60 seconds, we do tend to see a drop off. And I mean, that's that's pretty standard these days across all platforms. So, but definitely to get that storytelling element in there, I would recommend going above the 30-second mark.
Right.
Just- Sorry, Rachel, just wanted to quickly jump in. Absolutely agree with Jason. That's the answer that I would have given too. But just wanted to make sure that I'm kind of like mentioning, you know, if there is an idea for like a longer form content, or if you know, one of the candidates has like a story that they want to tell that might, you know, be like a bit of a longer video, you know, you're welcome to even post that as, you know, as Jay said, a 30 to 60 second video as like a part 1, and then saying, you know, check out my next video for part 2. Like we see that can work well too. So there's definitely ways to tell a longer story, but yeah, Jason and Bella will know like the way that they should be kind of communicating that through content guidelines.
That's great. Yeah, it's nice to see social content really doing that longer form by breaking it into parts. I think it's a really useful way, especially to get like a little teaser and then it brings people on to the next bit. I suppose with the media profile that you shared with us, one of the story ideas you've asked our Truth Our Way participants to pitch is 3 times video pins. When you're talking about 3 video pins as a pitch, are you looking for 3 that are complementary, that would be kind of part of a series?
I think it's totally up to that individual. So one thing that I think is amazing about Pinterest is, you know, people have so many different facets to them, so many different things that they're great at or inspired by. So, you know, we have some creators who are amazing foodies, but at the same time, they're also incredible home designers and DIY experts. So to them, I would say, you know, do one video that's food related, one that's home, one that's decorating. So it's really up to the individual who is pitching. And back to Justine's earlier point, maybe the 3 videos are a series and they're all connected in some way. And it's one long story, but you've used 3 different videos to tell that story. So we're really open. We've seen both work very effectively on the platform. So there's really no right or wrong.
That's awesome. I'll just pause for a sec, see if Blair, have you got any questions at this point before I continue on?
No questions.
Beautiful. All right. So maybe for the people who'll be watching this from home, just a little bit more detail about some of the strong stories that you've seen lately, or even some ideas that you are interested in people publishing on your platforms. I don't know if you commission ideas, if you ever have your own and you ask community to go out and source them for you. But yeah, if there are any particular themes and topics, just to get everyone thinking about the sort of Pinterest yarns they could pitch.
Maybe we'll do a little round robin with the 3 of us, because I think we all kind of work with different kind of content partners, and we all kind of have our areas that we're probably more invested in than others, even though we shouldn't say that out loud. But for me, I've just actually recently worked with Delicious magazine, and they have just done a show with Naughty Barrow. So it's called Make It Delicious. And so what they've done is they've actually created bite-sized videos that are all about Aussie native ingredients. And it's a really cool take on the food genre that I kind of haven't really seen before, done in like a really cool social way. And so that content, just to say this as well, all our content you can add links to. So a lot of like bloggers, a lot of, you know, small business owners, they'll create content on Pinterest and then they'll add a link. And so people can then consume what they're getting on Pinterest, that in that bite-sized 60-second video, and then click through to the hero website where there is maybe a longer video or, you know, the full recipe to something to cook. So that's a cool one that I've seen recently, in a really cool way of I don't know, tackling the food space that isn't just recipe driven. I'll throw to Justine. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jace. So in terms of awesome content that I've seen on the platform lately, I'll kind of like focus in on maybe like Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander content that I've seen just for this discussion. But I think, you know, again, like all ideas are welcome. We definitely have categories or topics that, you know, perform, like best perform all the time. Like, you know, Pinterest is known very much for fashion or home decoration, like event planning, things like that. But we're definitely seeing a lot of entertainment creators come onto the platform, like younger creators like Mesa, who just have, you know, something like inspiring in their everyday life. So that kind of content is more than welcome too. Bella has been working very closely with one of my favorite creators on the platform at the moment, Outback Tom. So he's a First Nations man as well, from Yorta Yorta. And his content, like, I mean, obviously he has a foodie angle. It's kind of entertainment too, because they're very funny bite-sized videos with his granddad. But then he's also been posting content or, you know, doing some storytelling about like fashion and how he dresses, you know, for the city as a kind of like, you know, from the outback. So anything that kind of showcases like an interesting element of your culture, or, you know, who you are, a day in the life of you as a, you know, Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander creative, is something that I love to see on the platform, and something that I can then showcase as like, you know, see, we have so many diverse identities. So yeah, like you can think about your content in the way of like my category or my specialty, which might be food or home or fashion or beauty, or it can just be like lifestyle content that kind of, like Jace was mentioning, gives someone who's watching it, you know, that like jolt of inspiration or entertainment, or they've learned something about, you know, your culture or your everyday. That kind of content does awesome as well. And I'll pass over to Bella.
Cool. I feel like you, Jason, Justine, both absolutely nailed it. I couldn't agree more with what they've said. I work with a couple of artists, and art is one of our like really strong performing verticals on Pinterest for obviously very many reasons. But you know, as Jace or Justine mentioned before, I've worked with Lucari a fair bit as an artist, but I've also worked with an incredible artist called K-Ray. K-Ray Designs, you'd be able to find her. But I really love her approach to content creation. It's almost as if, yes, she's an artist, but there's so many different ways that she can tell a story as an artist. So more recently, you know, she did like a day in the life of an illustrator. She's also done like a paint with me, which is really good for that, like, it's just very lovely to watch that kind of art unfold. So it's really inspirational. But then something that she did recently, which I loved and has actually performed really well organically, was a kids NAIDOC activity. So it's you know, she did this kind of stencil, and then directly through using the idea pin links, you were able to go to her website and download it for free and print it out. So it's just another way for, like, I love that that particular idea pin is a way to not just have inspiration, but then be able to live it through. It's just a great example of that.
Those are great examples. Just break down what the idea pin is. Is that how you link to other places?
I'll jump in here. So idea pin is really our video. It's a video in-app content creation tool. So again, just like with, you swap the word pin for content, idea pin is just our way of saying video. What's amazing with that, and just to call out, is like you can do everything within the app. It's very easy. So you can shoot the raw footage on your phone as you would, you know, for any other platform. You can then upload it through the idea pin tool on Pinterest, and that's where you can add stickers, you can add licensed music, you can add text, locations, questions. So that's really the best way for a creator to showcase their personality and really kind of bring the content even more, I guess, to life, and give it a little bit of I don't know what's right, a bit of a sparkle. Let's go with that.
Awesome. I didn't realize that. Yeah, that was built in app. So does Pinterest have a sort of like a how-to video if that we had first timers who've never uploaded content using the app before?
We do have like a organic best practices sheet, but we also are working on like a curriculum where we can help creators who might be starting out on Pinterest to creators who are, you know, at that like already successful level but are trying to like elevate it a little bit more. So there's definitely things in the works, but there's also things that do exist outside of like that one page. There's also Jace, Justine and myself who meet with all of our creators regularly to give them like, you know, best practice and optimize their content as well.
Wicked, that's great. So another question I just had about the editing process. So once you've had a pitch, you've approved it, you're ready to go ahead with the content. What's the editing process like on your side once a creator has submitted their, say, their first draft of something?
I mean, the content creation is actually completely owned by the creator. So in terms of editing, like we're here to kind of recommend best practice, how that content might be able to be even more inspirational, or how we might come up with some like tips to optimize it so that, you know, the content will surface even more and perform better. But in terms of editing, really it's just part of it's a conversation between us. It's no formal like, you know, we're not going to get back and be changing everything, because I mean, at the end of the day, the story or the storytelling element is coming from that individual. We're really here just to make sure that that content has the best chance of success once it's posted to the platform.
And just jumping in quickly as well, like based on that question and the question before, another thing that I would recommend doing, and we're just talking about this before, but if you have, say, a content theme specifically, like I would encourage a creator to type that into the search bar and see what's surfacing on Pinterest, because that really is, you know, within the algorithm, like whatever's being surfaced is really generally what is best performing as well. So you can see what's working and what's surfacing just based on personal search.
Love it, Bella. I might just jump into Rachel if that's okay, and add a bit to what they've just said. So yeah, like Jace is right, you know, like we're here to kind of like help give advice on the content more stylistically, and we'll kind of say, hey, like we love it, you know, you might want to think about this, like this is what we see well in terms of like the like hero image, or, you know, like transitions or whatever that might be, but we want to make sure that, you know, whoever is the creator or the creative telling their story, that their voice and what they want to say is still authentic. But we definitely are here to kind of like help guide. If they wanted to send it to us prior to posting, we can kind of give them tips, and then even right at the very, very beginning, as Bella mentioned, because Pinterest is a, you know, visual search engine, people come onto the platform and specifically search for something that they're looking for. We have all of that insight and data, so we can see what people are searching for when it comes to like, you know, particular categories. So we're here to also help with content thought starters or ideas building if anybody might need that. So you might have an interest in art, but that's a very big world. And if you wanted to have some thought starters, we can definitely say, hey, like this is what we're seeing trend in the way of art. If you want to create anything along these lines as well, we're definitely there to help.
That's brilliant. Thanks, everyone. My last question on my list is, how does Pinterest promote paid content on the website?
Cool. So I'll just jump in first, if that's okay, Jace. So there's a few different ways. So that's where I kind of step in. So Jace and Bella really kind of like lead the way with guiding the creators, and they've got all these amazing relationships and make sure that they're educating creators and they're supporting you guys for success. And then when the content is live and ready, what I'll do is I'll work with Jace and Bella, and they'll say, hey, we've got this amazing creator, or they've created this. And so we have editorial articles that are live every single week on the platform, and I'll work with them to kind of program some of that into those articles. So when content is commissioned or you know, through a partnership or like a campaign, I will then program that into editorial so that it's getting you know, as much visibility as we can give it. And then I'll pass over to Bella and Jace because they also do some work in the back end as well.
Yeah, no, that was pretty much where I was going to go. I think like, because the editorial, the search page, which exists on the mobile app, really it's the most trafficked surface on Pinterest. And so being able to be displayed there, whether it's in our video stream or whether that's within the articles Justine mentioned, I think is the best publicity that anybody can get from Pinterest. But some other ways that we also work with our top creators to really get more eyeballs on the content for Pinterest is, you know, we really encourage them to post like snippets on their Instagram account, for example, with a link that then drives back to Pinterest. The more eyeballs they get on their content on Pinterest, the more likely the algorithm will surface that content as well. So, you know, we've got a few things that we can kind of chat about to make sure that content has the best chance of success. And then on top of that, Bella and I, when we have the budgets, we also are able to run house ads which are on Pinterest. What that basically means is we're able to kind of help boost that content and give it a little bit more love.
Beautiful. That was super informative. Thank you so much. I'll check with Blair quickly. Do you have any questions before I wrap this one up?
Yeah, it's a bit of a sidestep, but just with Pinterest being quite a big platform, I was just wondering if there are any sort of protections out there for Black content creators with regards to like maybe the content being victim to, you know, cyberbullying or anything like that nature, or like toxic online culture.
You know, that's a great question. It's something that Pinterest has done a lot of, particularly this year as well, to put in, you know, steps to make sure that content is safe and that creators are safe no matter who they are. One really great example is we've got something that we've introduced really recently called the comment code. And so what this is it's a pop-up that pops up for anyone who's about to comment on a creator's piece of work or piece of content. And it actually reminds them to be constructive, to be kind, really calls that out for them before they say anything. What's really awesome for us and that we're very proud of is the positivity of Pinterest as a platform. We don't see, I'll be honest, I haven't seen any negative comments on any of the content that our creators, that our key creators have created. Commenting is probably more common on other platforms because because you're coming to it with intent and you're coming there to already ask a question, that it just is more positive because of that. We're not a platform that is about like, you know, passively scrolling and just getting lost in the content. There really is that intent behind being on it. So I think with that comes that positivity, but I think the comment code is a really great one to make sure that protections are in place for creators who are, you know, putting themselves out there with the content on the platform.
Thanks, Blair. It's a really important question. And yeah, it's really good to hear that you've got a comment code in place. What's the process if there is a breach and somebody does receive a comment that isn't kind, isn't constructive, or even veers further and is actually racist? What's the process at that point?
So those comments get flagged. They're able to be flagged straight away by the user, or, you know, through our team. We're able to raise them and remove them obviously straight away. And you know, that process is pretty straightforward. We don't condone obviously any racist, sexist, anything like that remarks or comments on any piece of content that's created on the platform. So yeah, we've also recently this year introduced, maybe Justine or Bella, you might be able to speak a little bit on this, but we've also introduced for our users who are underage, so under the age of 16, their content, like users cannot comment on that content, which I think is really great. So that's also a new thing that we've put in place as well.
Yeah, thank you, Jace. But no, just to kind of like echo what you've been saying. Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great question, Blair. And I remember, Rachel, when we met in person in Cairns last year, that was a question that a lot of, the creators in the room were asking too, like, how can I, I'm putting myself out there and being vulnerable, like what protections do you have in place for us? And yeah, as Jace mentioned, that's why we have things like the creator code to remind people who are creating content to be kind, be productive, constructive. And then on the other side, there is that comment code too. And yes, people bypass that. People might still be able to leave comments, but just to kind of echo what Jace is saying, I've very, very, very rarely, if ever, have seen negative comments, on Pinterest and like versus other platforms. And I think that is in the way that it's built from scratch. We have the hair pattern tool and the skin tone selector tool. So I think a lot of the people who are on Pinterest can see like where our values lie and maybe feel less inclined to kind of leave those negative comments. I've not seen very much of it, but as Jace mentioned, we have internal teams that kind of like screen, they can get like flagged for any kind of like negative comments and they're on that right away. And then this year, we did have a massive business overhaul that's looking at our trust and safety measures to make sure that we're protecting, people who are underage users and things like that. So it really does come from the top. Like there's a lot of scrutiny about protecting our users and making sure that we maintain that positivity because we do differentiate ourselves in market with that. So they're very protective about that. But we're always here to support as well. And I think that's another difference is that Jace and Bella have relationships with the creators that we work a lot with. And so if anything was to ever happen, they could always reach out as well.
And sorry, I just want to add, because I mean, there's not much more to add, but just like feedback from our creators that we get to speak to these creators one-to-one, daily, weekly, monthly, we get to see them in person. And the overall sentiment is they come to Pinterest because it is a safe platform to create content that they want. And similarly, back to what I was saying before about really being like, as a pinner, you are the master of your own destiny. Like you get to choose what you search for. Equally, as a creator, you really do get to choose the types of content that you create. There's no real like set guidelines, of course, wanting it to be safe for everyone to consume. But the overall sentiment has always been, I come to Pinterest as a creator because it is safe, because it is the #1 most trusted social platform. Like we have that data around that. So it's not just us being like, yeah, it's all safe and wonderful over here. Like we do have that trusted and backed up data to suggest that.
That's awesome. Blair, anything else from you? It was a great question.
No, that's all I wanted to ask. Thank you.
It's a really comprehensive response, because sometimes we do ask these questions of platforms and they don't have as much prepared, and they haven't really thought about these things. It's clear you have thought about this a lot, and I think that's going to mean a lot to especially young First Nations creators. So I just want to say thank you for your time. Is there anything that you would like to share now that I haven't touched on, that Blair hasn't touched on?
No, I think you absolutely nailed it. I feel like, we've been able to really talk about, what we do, and I think, how we do help our content creators find success and really get the most out of the platform. But really, if there's anything that I can leave you with, it really just goes back to that message of inspiration. Like we are a platform of inspirational ideas. So for anyone, when they're thinking about, whatever content vertical it comes from, whether it's food or design or fashion, when they're thinking about their ideas, just think about you know, what inspires them, and then that will inspire other people.
Great message. Thank you. Thanks so much, Jace, Bella, and Justine. We'll be in touch soon, and we'll be sharing all of this plus some of my notes from the yarn with everybody else. So I look forward to hopefully seeing some pictures come your way, and have a great NAIDOC week.
You too. Happy NAIDOC week, and we can't wait to see them as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks all.
Thanks so much for joining as well, Blair. So
Yeah.
lovely to meet you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. All right.
See you. Bye.